Hello all, and welcome back to another video on my channel. In this video, I'm at Manchester Piccadilly station in the northwest of England, where I'll be riding an Anglo-Welsh service between the northwest of England and South Wales on board one of Transport for Wales' Class 175 Coradia units, alongside the very scenic and picturesque Welsh Marches Line. So, without further ado, it's time to get this show on the rails. Out of all the stations in the north of England, Manchester Piccadilly is by far one of my favourites. Originally built in 1842 and named as Store Street, it was later renamed as Manchester London Road in 1847, before settling on its current name in the 1960s to coincide with the West Coast Main Line modernisation programme, and is named after the nearby Piccadilly Gardens and Piccadilly Street. The station is well populated with a large number of restaurants and shops, from well-known brands such as Starbucks and TGI Fridays. Therefore, you are not very short off when it comes to preparing for your onward journey. There are also various waiting areas located throughout the station. Here's an example of one located on the second level, closest to the entrance. Whilst there are many ways to access the station via public transport, the Manchester Metrolink tram is undoubtedly the most useful way to do so, with the subway system being located between platforms 9 and 10. However, disabled access to the tram platforms can also be found further east of the station, which is also useful for those with heavy luggage. Manchester Piccadilly is served by a large array of operators, including Northern, TransPennine Express, Cross Country, and Avanti West Coast. East Midlands Railway and Transport for Wales also operate services here, the latter of which we'll be travelling with today. We still have quite a bit of time before our service departs today, so why not admire the trains in the station? The architecture is phenomenal. It reminds me of Paddington Station in central London, which I've done several videos on already, so feel free to check them out at your leisure. Our service today is the 8:31 departure to Milford Haven, which takes a total of 6.5 hours and a grand total of 28 stops, easily making it one of Transport for Wales' longest regional routes. However, we will only be going as far as Newport today, as this should be more than enough to cover the Welsh Marches Line. That, and I do have a connecting service. A few minutes later, we can see that our train has now arrived from Cardiff Central, which is a 3-carriage Class 175 Coradia train. Originally built between 1999 and 2001 by Alstom at their Washwood Heath plant in Birmingham, the Class 175s were originally ordered by First North Western for services on the North Wales coastline and on services to Blackpool and Cumbria from Manchester. A total of 27 units were built, with the order being split between 11 2-carriage units and 16 3-carriage units. Fortunately, we have a 3-carriage unit today. This is fortunate as this service does tend to get rather busy, as can be seen from the people alighting here. That being said, it's now time for us to board our unit and take a look around. As with most trains in the Transport for Wales fleet, the Class 175s are standard class only, with the only member of the fleet to have first class being the Mark IV sets used on the Holyhead to Cardiff Premier service. However, a few Class 197s expected to replace the Class 175s are expected to have some first class seating. One thing I do like about the Class 175s is that there are toilets in every carriage. However, on this service today, the middle carriage toilet was locked out of use. Although, I am sitting in the front of the train today, so this isn't really too much of an issue for me. The common theme throughout the train is 2+2 seating with tables. However, there are some seats as well with smaller tables, making it ideal for both regional express and commuter services, both of which the train can be found on. The rear carriage of the train features a PRM specified area, including a wheelchair accessible toilet. And, with that, that's the walkthrough of the train done. So, without further ado, it's time for me to take my seat and hit the Iron Road. The seating I'll be in today is an airline style seat. As such, it should be quite a pleasant journey. So, let's go. Longsight Depot can be found a few miles south of Manchester Piccadilly, and we can also see Avanti West Coast's newly refurbished Pendolino train, pending entry to service. I will be having a look at this relatively soon as it's released into service, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the video. TransPennine Express also maintain their Civity units here, as well as their Mark 5A carriages used on Liverpool and Scarborough services. Approaching our first stop of Stockport, we are now passing over the Stockport Viaduct, with the Stockport Pyramid in full view in the background. Originally built in 1992 and formerly owned by the Cooperative Bank, the site was sold to Emaar Developments of Saudi Arabia in 2019 for £4.5 million, with plans in place to turn it into office space. As for Stockport Station itself, this is a major part of the West Coast Main Line branch between Crewe and Manchester, with most, if not all, services stopping here. All northbound services that call here either call or terminate at Manchester Piccadilly, with connections also being provided to places such as Sheffield, Liverpool, Wales, and London Euston. Approximately 10 minutes after leaving Stockport and over 20 minutes after leaving Manchester Piccadilly, we are now approaching Wilmslow, a market town in northeastern Cheshire. Wilmslow is where Manchester Airport services merge with the main Crewe to Manchester line, with, from this station, it's only a 24-minute journey between here and Crewe. As with many areas on the West Coast Main Line, we get to experience some great scenery here. However, this is nothing compared to what we'll see on the Welsh Marches Line later on. The maximum speed of this line is 110 miles an hour. However, the Class 175s are only 100 mile an hour capable, meaning that's as much as we'll be able to get out of on this route. Joining the main West Coast Main Line at Crewe, we can see the APT prototype stored at Crewe Heritage Centre, which has been there since the 1990s. We can also see several HST power cars, which have been stored there since 2019 and 2020, when they were withdrawn from service with their respective operators. As for Crewe Station itself, this is undoubtedly one of the most key junctions on the West Coast Main Line, linking services between the West Midlands, the northwest of England, and as well as North Wales, to London Euston, as well as services along the Welsh Marches Line to South Wales, and services to the East Midlands. Transport for Wales, as well as providing the Welsh Marches Line services, also provides an hourly shuttle to Chester for services along the North Wales coastline to Bangor, Llandudno and Holyhead. Upon departure from Crewe, we can see a large collection of Locomotive Services Limited's heritage rolling stock, commonly used on their rail tours, including HST power cars, Class 90s, as well as several Mark IIIs. There are also a majority of liveries present here, as, for example, one of the HSTs runs the Midland Pullman service, as well as the rail charter service along the Settle and Carlisle line. Other services are provided under the Intercity brand. Right, there's not really much to show on this portion of the trip, so I feel like it's time for a Know Your Seat to take a look at the train's features. These trains have the same seats as the similar Class 180 Adelante diesel multiple unit, and as such, they are rather comfortable and well suited for long distance journeys such as this. As to be expected from a long distance journey such as this, the trains have armrests at the middle and end of each seat, which are rather comfortable from my point of view. At the back of each airline style seat is a tray for the storage of small items such as laptops and food, as well as a cup holder for certain drinks, which is pretty nice. As for the legroom, well, you can see there that the stand for the chair makes it rather cramped, which is quite disappointing for a long distance train. Each seat includes plug and USB sockets, a new feature added to the class as part of their refurbishment between 2019 and 2022. Seat reservation ticket holders, as well as seat numbers, can also be found within the seats on the trains. However, Transport for Wales services don't actually use seat reservations, the only time I've ever seen this happen being on the Premier service between Holyhead and Cardiff. That brings us nicely into our next stop of Shrewsbury, the county town of Shropshire next to the West Midlands of England. Shrewsbury is around 9 miles away from the Welsh border to mid Wales, and is a major interchange for mid Wales services on the Cambrian line, as well as the North Wales Coast Line and the Welsh Marches Line. Now that we have left Shrewsbury, we are now able to fully take in the scenery that the Welsh Marches Line has to offer. We are experiencing this while operating at the line's top speed of 90 miles an hour. The typical speed range on the line is between 60 and 90, and we are clearly on the upper end of the spectrum here. The trains have plenty of luggage space on board, and we start with the overhead luggage racks, which are for small bags and items of luggage. These are above each and every seat. Standard luggage racks can be found throughout the train. However, I was also impressed to see some innovative solutions, such as space between the seats, as well as space behind the seats. As this is a legal requirement, passenger information systems are present on the trains. However, these days, I do find that Transport for Wales don't tend to use them, which is a bit of a shame. Around 25 minutes after leaving Shrewsbury, we now approach Ludlow, a historic market town in Shropshire. Ludlow is a key part of the Welsh Marches history and includes circa 500 listed buildings. The town itself is a good starting point for walks and cycles along the Welsh Marches, and also includes the famous Ludlow Castle. I think it's about time we check out the toilets on this train, well, one of the many toilets on this train. I opted for the standard one that was working, as this was the closest to my carriage and, conveniently, the only one free. Door locked, let's begin. Initial impressions. The refurbishment has treated these toilets rather well, although you can see some paint peel on the toilets. Otherwise, I do think the ambience is rather nice. Not to mention that the facilities are seem rather good. However, there was one thing that I should note, in that the soap wasn't really stocked, which was quite disappointing. The tap works well as it should, which is great. The dryer did take a bit of effort to get working, and even then, it only came out with a few sprays every now and then, which, if I'm going to be honest, is not great and not expected from a long distance train. So, for me, it's alright. I wouldn't say it's anything special though. Anyways, let's go. Almost half an hour later, we find ourselves arriving into Hereford, which is a civil parish, cathedral city, and is the county town of Herefordshire. It also links with the Malvern and Cotswolds lines, served by West Midlands Railway to Birmingham New Street, and Great Western Railway to London Paddington along the Cotswolds. It should be noted as well that this is the last station we'll be calling at in England, as 16 miles later we will arrive at the Welsh border to cross over to South Wales. Our last moments on the English side of the Welsh Marches are spent in the village of Pontrylas, located around 0.5 miles away from the Welsh border. The village lies in between Hereford and Abergavenny, our next calling point, and has not been served by rail since 1958, although this could change. Having now crossed the Welsh border into the county of Monmouthshire, we can now see the Sugarloaf mountain range in the background, indicating that we are very close to Abergavenny, our next station call. A major milestone has now been achieved, in that we are now calling at our first Welsh station of Abergavenny. It should also be noted here that, from this point onwards, the signs on the Transport for Wales stations will now be shown in Welsh as well as English, given that we are now officially in Wales, which is quite a nice touch in my opinion. From this point though, it should be noted that the service does get rather busy, well, busier compared to earlier on in the Welsh Marches. Even leaving Abergavenny, we are still in the presence of the Sugarloaf mountain range, which makes for a nice scenic backdrop as we continue our journey further into South Wales. Speaking of the Welsh language, the trains also have signs in both English and Welsh. For example, here is the Wi-Fi sign, which brings us on to the Wi-Fi available on the train. To connect to the Wi-Fi, simply select the Wi-Fi network named TfW Rail Services Wi-Fi, after which there will be a short wait whilst it connects you to the Wi-Fi. It then brings you onto the redirect page, and surprisingly, even offers options for you to choose the language between English and Welsh, another great feature which these trains have. Once you connect to the Wi-Fi, you are allowed a 50 megabyte limit before you are able to stop using it, which in a way makes sense, but at the same time it does restrict you with how much you can use it and what you can use it for. To test the Wi-Fi properly, I thought I'd go back onto real-time trains to check the progress of my Onboard service to Newport. As you can see, we have made up quite a bit of time which we already lost on the journey. However, real-time trains has not yet recognised that we have already left Abergavenny and the fact that we are not actually at Cwmbran yet, which brings us nicely into our next station. Cwmbran is our final calling point before Newport and our final calling point on the Welsh Marches Line. Oddly enough, when I was actually looking up information about this place, I found something interesting that apparently in Welsh, Cwmbran means the Valley of the Crows, which to me did stand out a little bit compared to the other stations which I was researching into. One thing I did forget to mention is that a trolley service with drinks and light refreshments is available on the train. Feel free to pause if you want to read the menu. It was also nice to see the old Arriva Trains Wales logo present, Transport for Wales' predecessor. Right, conclusions. Overall, I was rather impressed with the Transport for Wales Class 175 Coradia unit, with these trains being a credit to Alstom and Transport for Wales, both in terms of general ambience and ride quality following the refurbishment of them. Although, a point to note would be that the toilets should have been more stocked up with soap, not to mention that the dryer should have been improved, as well as there being more legroom on the airline style seats. But otherwise, I have to admit that the Class 175s are some of the best regional diesel trains the UK has, and it will be a shame to see them go from the franchise in 2023. Well, that's it from me guys, and welcome to Newport. And as we approach Newport, the third largest city in Wales, I'd like to thank you for coming along with me on this ride today. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a like, as well as share the video, as that really does help the channel to grow. If you're new to the channel, why not consider subscribing? I'm now uploading new videos every Sunday at 5 PM. Well, that's it from me guys. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.